Hi, hi everyone. If you just joined, this is Melanie. We're going to wait till about 5 minutes past the hour and then we'll get started. Hi everyone, this is Melanie. If you just joined, we're going to wait just one more minute for everybody to get on. So just give us one more minute to get started. All right, everybody, it looks like we're at 5:05, so I think we can get started. Is Jaya on the line?
I am here.
All right, awesome. I think you can kick it off for us.
Okay, so we have Melanie Espeland here, who is a Columbia grad, more specifically from Columbia Business School. And she is a former McKinsey alum and also a executive coach. I think she posted her website in the chat area if you want to look for more, as well as her email address. And we are pleased to have her. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so
Melanie.
much for having me. And thanks everyone for taking a little time out of your day to join me. And I hope that we can have some fun together. I'll let you know that I will leave time for Q&A at the end. So you are welcome to ask me anything you have about voice, communication, executive presence. Please feel free to ask any questions at the end. And certainly, while I'm going through exercises and tips throughout the presentation, please feel free to just jump on your microphone if you have something to ask. I'd love for this to be conversational. So, again, feel free to just jump in if you're curious about something or you have a question. So I'll tell you a little bit about me too to give you some context. And I think what makes my skill set kind of interesting and why I wanted to have this seminar on voice and executive presence is that I have a business background. I'm ex McKinsey. I'm also a consultant, but I also have a voice background. I'm a signed voice actor with CESD Talent Agency. I've studied voice, singing, improv, and acting. So I really love to bring that specialty to the table when I'm working with all of my professional clients. And in my capacity as an executive coach, communication is certainly one of my biggest strengths. I do work on other things comprehensively, but this tends to be really the most interesting kind of subject area that a lot of my clients are curious about. A lot of them are probably very similar to your background. They would be, mid to senior level, have a similar degree like a Columbia grad, something of that nature. And I've worked with people across various industries from finance to tech to healthcare and others. So I think what I'll tell you too is my philosophy on communication. The philosophy that I have is we need to work on both the literal and the figurative voice. What does that mean? The literal would be certainly what's coming out of my mouth right now, the sounds that you're hearing, the exhale that's helping to create sound. But what the figurative would be is my energy or the feeling that's being created when I enter a room and when I'm speaking. And that is hugely important when it comes to executive presence or having that gravitas or je ne sais quoi. So when I work with people, I like to address both the literal and the figurative voice, if you will. So that's a little bit about how I think. In addition to that, my three different levers of tools I like to use are physical, mental, and emotional. Within those three, they certainly push and pull and overlap, almost like if you were thinking about a woven fabric, they all kind of work together to create what your voice is. Today, we're going to use probably mostly physical tips. Those are really great quick wins and usually something that a lot of individuals aren't super aware of. So I think it's a really nice way in a short amount of time to teach you something that you can take away to really practice and use for the rest of your career. And we'll see how much time we have. We may get into some mental and emotional tools as well, but we'll certainly start with those physical items. And one other thing I'll say before I kind of start jumping into the tips is that typically with these physical tools, they tend to be things that you haven't ever really thought about before, or things that you've never really practiced or even been aware of. For instance, breathing is very important to speech because when you're speaking, your exhale is what's becoming your sound or your speaking voice. And so a lot of us aren't really aware of our breathing habits on the day to day basis. So, what I'm trying to say is, it may feel awkward at times when you're trying one of these physical tools. It may feel uncomfortable, even, or just really unfamiliar. And that's totally okay. That's very normal. So, just keep that in mind. The idea would be that you take these things away with you today and that you're able to practice them going forward. And certainly, consistent practice, frequent practice is the most helpful. Even if you can just practice for a minute or two a day, this will help you down the road. So, with that, I'll kind of jump into some of the first things that I want to talk about. So, the first thing is tongue placement. This is a tool that a lot of you are probably unaware of, but I think it's so fun and such a great way to kind of get into it and get into the mix. With tongue placement, the body is already moving around the tongue to create different types of sounds. And for the most part, it's going to be pretty subconscious for you. And you're not necessarily going to be aware of what your tongue is doing as you're speaking. In American English specifically, a lot of people tend to speak with their tongue in more of a mid average placement in their mouth. And when I talk about this, picture the side of your mouth. This is the bottom of the mouth, and this is your tongue running parallel to your mouth. And it's basically pulling back and forth into different places in the mouth as you speak. So for a lot of Americans, they speak somewhere in here, more so in the middle of the mouth. And what we would like to do is try to get you to be more aware of your tongue placement and move it more into a forward placement in the mouth. Now, why do we want to do this? This is going to help you with a couple of things. One thing is going to be improved diction. So if you find that people sometimes don't understand you or your speaking can be a little sloppy, this will help you to be a little bit more precise. And I do find an extra note here is that I find diction and precision tend to be way more important than your accent. I've had plenty of people come to me and say, I need to change my accent or I need to get rid of it, but it's really more of a precision issue. So that's the first thing it can help accomplish. The second thing it can help with is your projection. So, volume versus projection are two different things. If you've ever been in a live theater watching a stage show and you're in a seat all the way in the back of the theater and you can hear the performer, it's because of their projection. Their sound is moving further away from them. So, with this more forward tongue placement, your sound will be projected further. This can be relevant even on a Zoom call. It still can help you to be heard really clearly by everybody around you. And certainly, this is most useful in an in person setting, which hopefully we'll all be getting back to soon. And then I'd say the third thing that tongue placement can help with is warmth or that energy, that feeling of how you're speaking. A slightly more forward placement in American English can help you to sound warmer. It can help you to sound more approachable and inviting without killing a sense of authority. So, again, those are the three different things you can expect from this. And one other note I'll make here for anybody that does speak other languages, this is not necessarily true for other languages. For instance, if you take Russian, you're going to have a much more back tongue placement in order to make the proper sounds. So, again, this is speaking specifically to American English. So I'm going to walk you through how you can start practicing tongue placement in your mouth. You're welcome to do this at home along with me. I know a lot of you are off camera, which is totally fine. Feel free to be on camera if you want me to see you, but I'm totally fine either way. So what I want you to do is you're going to have the tongue again move backward. And to practice that, you can make the R sound in English. So that would be R, red, rose. You're going to feel that moving backward. You can also make a more exaggerated R sound by sounding like a pirate. So you can make the R sound by pulling it all the way back. So I know it may seem silly, but this is one of the best ways to, again, just become aware of what a back tongue placement would feel like. And again, you can say red, rose, and you can feel your tongue pulling backward. Now, conversely, to get that more forward placement, one really helpful way to practice this in English is with the TH sound, which in general tends to be a somewhat challenging sound, especially for individuals that learned English as a second language. You may be familiar with this. With the TH sound, you can practice words like this, the, that, then. And you can see in my mouth, my tongue is moving rather forward. You can see this, the, that, then. So my tongue isn't quite moving out of the mouth. It's not doing that, but it's coming close to really my teeth in the front and almost is in between my sets of front teeth. So again, this is showing you just how forward that tongue placement is. And again, you can say this, the, that, then. And you can also say tongue twisters like they thought the thesis was thorough. So again, these are great ways for you to practice more of that forward placement to help get you into that right rhythm and kind of feel it out. Now, I'm also going to show you what I sound like if I speak with my tongue in a more of a back placement versus middle versus forward. And oh, I hear someone has a question. Okay, that might have been a mic turn on by accident. So if anyone has a question, please feel free to just jump in at any time.
We have a few folks still coming into the room, so
Got it.
that might be what it is.
Perfect. Thank you for letting me know. That's super helpful. For anybody that just joined, welcome. You are welcome to jump in at any point and ask me any questions. This is totally informal, and I will have a Q&A at the end as well. So again, feel free to jump in if you like. So let's see. As I was saying with tongue placement, I'm going to show you now what I sound like with that back, middle, and forward placement. I am also going to warn you, I'm going to sound really silly when I speak with my tongue all the way back because it's just not a normal placement for American English speakers. The reason I'm doing this is to show you just how much your tongue placement affects how you sound, because you're going to hear me sound completely different with these three placements. So again, the tongue is like this, parallel to the bottom of your mouth. I'm moving it back towards the middle, where probably most of you speak generally, and then towards the front. So overall, just take a listen to how I sound. So I'm going to pull it all the way back. Hi, my name is Melanie. My tongue is now at the back of my mouth. I sound really silly, but this is to show you how different I can sound based upon tongue placement. Now I'm speaking more so in the middle of my mouth. This is how most Americans speak. It sounds fine, but it's a little bit more muffled. There's just a little bit less power behind it. And then this is me speaking more forward. This is how I tend to speak normally. This is how I've been trained to speak. You can hear that my sound is clear, it's less muffled. My mouth is also more open because the tongue is more forward. The jaw is moving a little bit more, and it's allowing again for that projection and a little bit of that warmth to come through. So, again, those three different sounds moving all the way back are kind of sound like this, very, very different. Now I'm kind of in the middle of my mouth. I sound a little more muffled. And then here I am speaking forward. So you can really hear a difference. So again, the purpose of that is to show you just how different you can sound. What I'd love for all of you to do at home to just practice having a more forward placement. Again, get used to where your tongue is in the mouth, be aware of it. Practice that R sound for going all the way back. R, red rose. You can feel your tongue pulling back. And for the front, practice that TH sound like this, the, that, then. Notice my tongue placement. They thought the thesis was thorough. And again, I did make a note here that I want to make clear. Your mouth will move a little bit more. That bottom jaw will open a little bit more if your tongue's a little bit more forward. And this is helpful to be aware of. A lot of us carry a ton of tension in our faces and we're not even aware of it. Some of you may have been told before, oh, I'm told I sometimes have an upset look on my face or that I look really serious. It's because a lot of us are holding tension in different parts of the face, which help us to articulate our sound and our voices. So, being aware of how much your jaw opens can be helpful. If you see me talking like this with my mouth not very open, you can hear that I'm quite muffled, and then I'm actually opening my mouth more. So that also very much affects your sound and does tie in a little bit to this idea of tongue placement. So, in addition to practicing your sounds and moving your tongue forward, you can also think about how much your jaw is opening. If you need to, you can also massage it a little bit. You can find those connectors on the side of your face, go ahead and massage it. You can use your index fingers for more power. You can clasp your fingers like this, get those thumbs available to get in there and give yourself a nice massage. The other fun way to massage your jaw is by yawning. So that's also a really nice way to just open up the jaw, open up the mouth, just release it. So, if anything, sometimes if you're nervous before a presentation at work, if you want to have that beautiful voice and that open mouth, allow yourself to yawn, give yourself a nice little massage on the side there, and even just kind of shake it out. Maybe even get up from your desk and do a little dance. Whatever you need to do to just release some of that tension. It will not only help the facial expression, but literally your sound to be a lot crisper and cleaner. So that's a lot of info right there for you to practice at home. The more you practice this, the better you'll get, the crisper, the better your sound will be. Now, another thing I do want to go over is akin to this. It's another physical tool, and this is the pen and mouth technique. Now, I'm going to explain this one a little bit to you, and it aligns to what we just talked about. I was just saying how opening the mouth, the jaw, these are very important to having movement physically in order to support the sound of your voice. Now, the jaw and the tongue are your facial articulators that are physically doing, I would say, most of the work in affecting your exhale as it's coming out of your mouth. Obviously, your lungs, your diaphragm, your respiratory system have gotten this air ready. Now, the tongue and the jaw are doing a lot of work to create that sound. So, What's happening though here is the tongue and the jaw are doing most of the work. And so other muscles inside your mouth and inside your face are getting a little lazy because they're relying on the tongue and the jaw to do most of the work. So, really, this pen and mouth trick is to basically handicap your tongue as well as your jaw so that it forces all these other muscles and facial articulators to do more work. It's almost like a barbell for the mouth, if you will. It's strengthening those other muscles, basically waking them up and getting them ready to get going. So, this is a great tool to use, especially if you have any issues with diction or clarity in the way that you speak. It's also helpful if you tend to speak quickly, and this will just strengthen up those muscles to really support your sound. Another fun fact here is that this is something I picked up from friends on Broadway. And this is something they would do before going on stage in order to just support their muscles, support their voices, make sure they were clear and projecting. So, this is something you can do at home. You can literally take a pen or something similar to this type of shape. I've also seen this done with a wine cork. So, whatever you have laying around, pen is usually the easiest, but something with this similar shape. You're going to literally put it inside the mouth on top of the tongue, like that. And then you're going to have your teeth holding the pen. So your mouth is basically going to be held closed because your teeth are holding onto the pen. So again, like this, holding it closed, like this. If you need to, you can hold the end of the pen with your fingers if you find that you're having some trouble holding it up. So again, putting it inside the mouth like this, holding it closed, use your finger, or let it go. So again, this is a great way to practice getting those muscles in tune. You can have the pen in your mouth for a minute, 5 minutes, whatever you can spare, and you can literally say or read anything. You could read a passage out loud from the newspaper, from a book. You could talk to your significant other, whatever you want to do to just practice speaking with it in your mouth. Again, this will strengthen those muscles. Another interesting fact here is if there's some words or sounds that are challenging for you, which all of us have that one word that we have trouble pronouncing or that one sound, this is a really nice way to work on it because it's really going to target the muscle groups to understand how to actually support creation of that sound. So, in conjunction with the last thing we talked about, tongue placement, if you're using that TH sound, this, the, that, then, if you're using that sound to help get that forward tongue placement, if TH is hard for you or you're having trouble with forward tongue placement, you can use this pen in the mouth technique to help you with that, where you can literally say those TH sounds while this is in the mouth. So it would be something like this, the, that, then. They thought the thesis was thorough. So again, I know I look silly, but it does work. These are also things, of course, you can do at home totally by yourself so that you don't have to do it in front of anybody. So I think that's it for the pen in the mouth technique as well as tongue placement. Again, these are just really great tools that you can use ongoing over time just to make sure that you're building that muscle capacity and you're just building physical capacity for your voice to sound really beautiful. Now, I think the next thing I want to go over would be I want to talk a little bit about breathing because we've talked about the physicality of your mouth and your face, but we haven't quite talked about the airflow. This is an exhale that's coming out. We really want to support it. So, some of you might be familiar with breathing from maybe a yoga class or meditation, or perhaps if you're an athlete. We also need to be aware of our breathing when we're speaking. I do find that a lot of clients, their breathing is affected when they're nervous, when they go into a presentation, they forget to breathe, they hold their breath, they quicken the pace of their speaking because they're breathing so quickly and so shallow that it actually speeds up their speech and therefore makes them harder to understand. So it definitely something I see a lot of, and it's just really important to be aware of and something that you can build upon over time. Now, what you can do here is practice basically using not only your diaphragm, but also inhaling and exhaling for longer periods of time. So overall, the goal here is not only to breathe in more deeply so that you're using your diaphragm to get in a lot of air, but you also want to breathe in and breathe out more slowly. So again, this is not only getting more air so that you have more air to work with when you're exhaling, but you also want to do it a little bit more slowly and more controlled. Again, if you are breathing really quickly, it does affect the speed at which that you're speaking. So, scientifically, the perfect breath that allows all of your systems internally to work perfectly and super efficiently is a 5.5-second inhale and a 5.5-second exhale. That actually feels super long when you practice it. Most people I work with say, wow, that's crazy. I usually do not inhale for that long, maybe half as long. So, that's pretty normal for most Americans. But again, it should be slowed. I will say that getting a 5.5-second inhale and exhale, that is not necessarily the goal. It's again a scientific fact. It's the most efficient way of breathing. The key here again is just building awareness of your breath and just slowing it down over time. So that's something you can practice again at home. A 5.5-second inhale, and then a 5.5-second exhale. And just doing that for about a minute or two, just getting used to that pace and really getting a sense of just how quickly you're breathing now. In order to make sure you're breathing deeply while you're doing that and using the diaphragm, there's a couple of ways that you can be aware of it. The diaphragm is basically a dome shaped muscle and it sits below your ribs. For the ladies, you can kind of feel it right under your bra line. That's usually the best place to kind of get a sense of where it's sitting. And this is something that it's tough to feel it externally. If you place these fingers, if you take your middle and index finger and place it basically right below the bust line for the ladies, similar place for men, if you place it right there in the chest and you laugh, you can usually then feel the diaphragm pushing against your fingers. Or you can make these sounds. You can go, ha, shh, ha, shh. You can make those sounds, and usually then you can feel the diaphragm pushing against your fingers. So that can at least give you a sense of just where it's sitting in the body and kind of what's happening when you're breathing. Now, in order to actually get the diaphragm working, there's a couple things you can do to make sure that you're actually engaging it and that you are therefore breathing in deeply enough, getting a lot of air to play with when you're speaking. So, one way to get that diaphragm engaged is to laugh. Laughing engages our diaphragm typically. So, that's a really nice way to kind of reboot your system and get it working properly. And the other way you can do it is through practice, really, where you are really engaging in thinking about your breathing. To do this, I would recommend that you put a hand on your belly. So basically, the belly where your belly button is, this would act as a proxy for the diaphragm. Since the diaphragm is a little bit hard to feel externally, if your belly is moving inward and outward as you're breathing, then it's a way of letting you know that you are getting that diaphragm working and you are breathing in deeply enough. So, again, that belly is a proxy for feeling the diaphragm. So, again, to practice this, you can have that hand on the belly. You can sit up nice and straight. Make sure that your shoulders aren't up here or that your head is tilted or that your chin is down or up. Just have your head be nice and level, your eyes parallel to the floor, your shoulders nice and relaxed, sitting up fairly straight. And you can do this sitting in a chair or standing or lying down as well. I find for most people, they find it most comfortable doing it sitting. And again, have the hand on the belly. And you're just going to go ahead, breathe in through the nose. You'll hold it for a moment, and then you will exhale through the lips slowly, doing it in a controlled manner. So you're not going to do this. You're not doing that. We want you to just control it, and I'll show that to you. So, again, just to recap, we are basically using the belly as a proxy to double check if we're using our diaphragm, if we're engaging it when we're breathing. You want to use that diaphragm to get a lot of air in the body so that when you exhale, you have lots of air to play with to create that beautiful, nice, robust voice. So go ahead, you can practice this along with me if you like at home. You're going to put one hand on your belly and you're going to breathe in through your nose, and then you're going to exhale in a controlled manner through your lips. So go ahead and you can just watch me or you can go along. So I'm going to go ahead and breathe in. Okay. While I was doing that, my hand, when I inhaled, it moved outward on the belly. And when I was exhaling, it slowly moved inward with the belly towards the body. Now, if my exhale was a lot longer than yours, that's totally okay. It is normal for people to have a fairly short exhale, even when they're trying to control it, if you haven't really practiced this before. So, again, totally okay. You can keep practicing this at home. I find that practicing your breathing and simply just being more aware of it does allow people pretty quickly to just have better breathing habits. And with those better habits, you just have more air and more control then over the voice that's coming out. So, something for you to think about. Again, you can practice that at home. The two things I talked about were the slowing down of your breathing. So, again, the 5.5-second inhale, 5.5-second exhale, and then breathing in deeply by using the diaphragm, using that hand on the belly, like I just did. So, overall, those are some good ones to try at home. I would also say, I think I'll show you real quickly how different I sound when I don't really have a lot of air to support my voice. So, again, this is just another way of showing you just how important this is. I'm going to show you what I sound like when I take a super sharp inhale, where I'm just basically inhaling into here. I'm not inhaling down into my diaphragm, and I will say my name. Then I'll take a nice deep breath in and say my name again. So you're going to hear such a big difference in how I sound. So just go ahead and take a listen. Hi, I'm Melanie. Hi, I'm Melanie. So both very different. Now, my speaking voice, as I'm speaking to you now, is a little bit higher than that last one. It's a slightly higher pitch than that super, super deep one after I took that nice deep breath. But you could hear a huge difference from when I had almost no air to support me. Again, it was something like this. Hi, I'm Melanie. So again, very different from where I normally speak because I couldn't support my voice. I really didn't have enough air there. What you really heard there was a couple things. My voice was higher in pitch, and it also was a little thinner, I would say. There was less body to it, less texture, because it was literally less air to support it. It couldn't travel as far and project. So overall, it's just a little bit less of a impressive voice. We also do find that in business, using a deeper pitch, again, whatever is natural for you, but using a deeper level of your pitch is a better way to be authoritative. So you could really see how just having the air to support you makes a really huge difference in how you sound overall. So, something for all of you to consider. So let's see, we've covered a bunch of things. I do want to have time for Q&A, but I think we have some time for me to show you a little bit more before we do that. Again, if anybody has questions, feel free to just jump on in. I think what we should talk about next is I'm going to talk to you about one of the emotional slash mental tools. So everything we've discussed so far is physical, right? All of those things are going to feel awkward at first, but they are things you can start practicing immediately at home today to get some short term wins as well as long term wins as you practice these and they become more natural for you. In the world of both the mental and emotional tools is melody. So if you think about melody, it is similar to when you sing. When you hear a song, there's a melody. When you sing, there's a melody. And when you speak, there's a melody. Everybody has a different pattern, a different way of speaking. The melody can be your pitch and all of your different pitch changes. It can be your speed, if you speed up on certain words, if you elongate certain words. It can be the energy or the feeling or the tone that you bring. So there's all these different aspects of melody. It's basically overarching, what do you feel and sound like to other people? What is that external message? So What I like to think about here is I do think that melody is really important overall to having strong executive presence. When I talk to a lot of people about executive presence or gravitas or the je ne sais quoi, whatever you want to call it, they wonder, how do I actually achieve it? And in American business, the holy grail is really getting that sense of authority, but also warmth and that approachable nature. And again, this is specific to American business. This would be slightly different if we were talking about other countries, but in the US, that's really that golden standard. Do you have that approachability, the likability, that warmth, and also the authority and the knowledge base? So those can be really hard to balance in your melody and when you're speaking. I do find that for a lot of clients, this is a challenge. I think for a lot of individuals, they tend to fall in the realm of being authoritative and knowledgeable, but then kind of lacking in that warm for that little extra kind of spice, that energy level. And they're not sure how to do that and still be authoritative. So I want to show you a nice trick for how you can start doing this. The emotion of something like happiness or fear or gratitude, all of these emotions have a general melody that most people within the US are going to use. You already know how to do this subconsciously for various emotions. You're going to change your melody and therefore your messaging based upon the emotions you're feeling, unless you're trying to hide them. Now, one that is really underutilized in the US is the melody of gratitude. What's really cool about this melody when you're speaking is that it tends to allow you to sound warm, as we were just talking about. It has a nice calmness to it, and it allows you to still be authoritative and grounded. So it gives people a sense in a business setting of being that calm, cool, collected authority, someone who knows what they're doing, but also has that warmth and that approachability, that little extra it factor. So, overall, how do you actually break down gratitude? There's a couple things you guys can do. One is you can literally think of something that you're grateful for and use that as your tool in order to have this type of melody at work. That would be, for example, a very specific person or specific moment in your life. The more detailed you can be, the better, because you're creating basically a trigger for your brain to kind of grab onto, to feel that emotion, to bring that emotion authentically into the present tense. So I like to say, think of your life as a movie. If you took a screenshot of that moment, what would that moment when you were grateful look like? What were the five senses? What did you see? What were the smells? Were you eating something? What were you touching? Were you sitting on something hard or soft? What were you wearing? What were people wearing around you, etc.? And certainly, smell in particular is a very powerful sense when it comes to memory. So, if you remember any of that piece, definitely throw it into the mix. So, overall, that is a really nice backdoor into utilizing this melody and this energy to create that type of executive presence, thinking of this gratitude moment in your life, creating this trigger. It's a really nice way to make sure that you can bring that extra something to the table. Now, beyond that, I do also want to break down gratitude so that you also understand mechanically what's actually happening to your voice. And this way, you can also practice it in a more manual way if you prefer. A couple of things are going to happen. One is that your pace is going to slow down a little bit from your normal speaking pace, not by a ton, but by a little bit. And you're also going to elongate one or two words typically in a sentence. And by elongate, I mean one or two words are literally going to be a little bit longer or slower than the rest of the sentence. So, for instance, I could say to you, I had a great time Tuesday. Or I could say, I had a great time Tuesday. So great was a little bit longer. So the actual speed was a little slower. The word was elongated versus the rest of the sentence. So that tends to happen. So again, the overall pace slows down a little bit, and you tend to have one or two words that also slow down a little bit more. What's also going to happen is your pitch tends to be on the lower side. It should be where you normally speak or slightly lower than that. Of course, always within your natural range. We never want to put on a voice, but just considering your natural range, you want to be around where you are normally or slightly lower. You're not going to have a ton of inflection changes. And by inflections, I mean changes in your pitch. They're not going to be huge. In your normal speaking, or particularly if you're excited, you might have a lot of larger changes in your pitch. Here, the change or the range is going to be a little smaller. So it's going to be a little more controlled. That gives the feeling of being a little bit calmer. So overall, I'm not going to go like this. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And then down here, you're not going to have these huge pitch changes that you might have with other emotions. Again, here it's much more controlled. Let's see. Other than that, I would say the other thing to keep in mind is that you will not end sentences with a higher pitch. So you don't want to end a sentence going upward. So for example, I wouldn't say, "How about we meet Tuesday?" I would say, "How about we meet Tuesday?" So again, don't say things as a question where you have to go up at the end of the sentence. Say it as a statement where you're going to use the same pitch, if not a slightly lower pitch, at the end of a sentence. Someone, by the way, that does this really well is John Hamm when he plays Don Draper in Mad Men. It's a master class in not inflecting upward at the ends of sentences. So, a fun little tool for you guys to check out if you want to know how to make any of your questions sound more powerful. You can look at what he does in that show. He says all questions as a statement. Anyhow, that's going a little off topic. So, overall, that will break down for you in a more methodical or manual way how the melody sounds of gratitude and why it's a little bit different from your normal speaking. So, I hope that all of those things are helpful to you. Again, what I would do at home, because this melody of gratitude is just so powerful for giving you that sense of warmth and compassion and authority, I would recommend doing two things. One is the first exercise that I mentioned, which was thinking about a specific moment in your life where you were grateful, truly, literally writing down what does this image look like? What is that snapshot of the movie of your life? Writing down all five senses and therefore creating a very clear image so that every time you want to use this tool, you're authentically creating gratitude in that moment so that you're not acting, it's totally authentic, and therefore it will be authentic as you're speaking. So I think that's one tool you can use. You can practice it in a low stakes situation with friends or with family. And then when you're a little more comfortable, you can practice it at work. The second was doing this manually. So, again, creating sound of gratitude by doing the manual things I just mentioned. So, your pace again will be slower, certain words will be elongated. You will have, let's see, you'll have a smaller range of pitch changes. So, all of these different things we mentioned, you can also try doing that manually. When you are practicing changing your sound manually without a trigger, as I was earlier talking about, that can be tough because it's something you've probably never done before. In that case, I would literally record yourself trying to do this. So, speaking normally and then recording yourself trying to mimic this melody of gratitude or whatever other emotion you'd like to mimic, and then play it back for yourself. And that way you can get a sense of whether or not it sounds authentic. You can even play it for a friend or someone who you trust and say, "How do I sound here?" Or what emotion is happening here, just to get a sense of also what they think of the way you sound. I think the last comment I'll make there for any of this self practice, and this is kind of a fun little fact that a lot of people I work with use, a lot of us have trouble really being objective when it comes to our voices and how we sound. It's one of the most difficult things to do. One thing you can do to get a better sense of how you sound to others is to literally pull your ears forward like this. And when you're speaking, you'll actually get a better sense of how you sound to other people. You're pulling your ears forward so that you can better hear your sound. It's not flat against the head and you're not hearing yourself inside your head. You're actually getting a better, more stereo-like sense of what other people are hearing. So that can be kind of a fun way of getting a sense of how you sound. Again, not something you're going to do in the middle of a board meeting, but something that you can do while you're practicing at home out loud or maybe practicing with a friend. So I think we have about 15 minutes left in the hour. I would love to take any questions that people have. You have full range to ask me anything about voice, executive presence, whatever's on your mind. I hope that this was helpful for you and that you learned some new things. I was hoping that a lot of this would just be totally new and different information for you. I would highly recommend that you practice these things if you can, even if it's just 2 minutes or 5 minutes a day. Overall, also, I will offer, I'm going to put my contact information again in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me, you can email me, find me on LinkedIn, but please feel free to contact me. So with that, I will open up the floor. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to just come on your mic and ask away.
I'll kick things off.
Oh.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead. Daisy.
Okay, sure. Maybe I can turn on my camera too. So, hi, Melanie. Thank you so much for having me and having everyone here. I had prepared a lot of questions before the call today, but after hearing you speak, you answer all my questions, and
Awesome.
I just have only one question. So, my English is my second language, and I speak with an accent. And so I noticed that when I give a presentation or when I speak, my face may look very serious. So, and I think the reason is my brain has to do extra thinking or extra work in choosing the, professional words in English. So my question is, do you know any tips, like how can I sound more relaxed when I speak while, still sounding authentic and authoritative? Yeah, thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, you're so welcome. And that's very true for native English speakers as well as non-native English speakers, where they have more of this almost very serious face sometimes when they are giving a presentation or in a more high stakes professional situation, because they're in their head so much. Now, I would say there's really two voices. Remember, I was talking about literal versus figurative. There's this literal conversation happening coming out of my mouth, but there's also one in here that I'm having with myself. And for a lot of us, we probably are very cerebral in our work. We work at desks, we work with PowerPoint and Excel. So it's really easy to get kind of stuck in here. And it's harder then to be actually connected energetically into the room. So one piece of advice I have for you is to try to be more in the moment and in the room, worrying a little bit less about how do I sound? How is this going? Does the CEO like this idea? What am I having for dinner? We always have those random thoughts that go through our minds. So just do the best you can to truly be grounded in that moment and actually connecting with people in the room. It's easier said than done, though. So that takes a lot of practice. So I totally understand that's a difficult one to actually employ, but something for you to consider. I would also say for you,
I think you muted.
I somehow got muted. That was weird. So you can hear me now, yes? Okay, good. So with the facial articulators, we talked a little bit about the tongue today. We talked a little bit about the jaw. For you, I would suggest doing a full-blown facial workout to warm everything up before you're going into the presentation, just so everything is warmed up. There's a lack of tension, and that will help you to have less of that very kind of serious face where you are a little bit more active and a little bit more expressive. What I can help do is I can always share with you some, if you shoot me an email, I can share with you a couple of videos that I have in my resources of just various things you can do for facial tension. And I'm happy to share that with anybody else on this call. Just feel free to shoot me an email. It's hello@espelandenterprises.com. Just say that we met at this event and I'll share it with you. So Daisy, I think that would be best for you. Again, just being aware of your face, building that awareness, actually practicing warming it up on a daily or even just a weekly basis. I think that'll help you a lot.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
so welcome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again. Any other questions? Happy to answer anything.
I have a question. Do you have any quick tips for capturing attention quickly? Like, let's say you walk into a presentation, you just want to get everyone's attention without saying, guys, listen to me, stop talking type of
Yep.
vibe, or conversely, any just don't do's that people tend to do that you think are no-nos?
That's a great question. And sometimes it's herding cats, right? Especially with the world of Zoom, it can be really challenging to get people to be interested or involved. A couple of different types of tips I'm going to give. Such a good question. In a Zoom world specifically, if you have specific teams that you tend to meet with where you have large group meetings, I would say that you can set some rules of engagement up front with your team. That can be really helpful just to kind of herd the cats, so to speak, or just allow for a clear meeting, easier working relationship, letting people know how the meeting is going to run. Are you allowed to ask questions? Are you using the chat function? Are you using the hand raise function? Just having that quick chat about the rules of engagement, so to speak, on Zoom, I think can be really helpful for herding cats or keeping people's attention. So that's a very digital world specific point of view. A second tool I would say is, I have to say it, but practice introducing yourself. I know that sounds strange, but a lot of people I find when they are in a familiar situation throw it away. So, what I mean by throwing it away would be me saying, hey guys, it's Melanie. Hey, it's Melanie. Hi, here. Throwing it away. Like, oh yeah, I'm here. I'm on Zoom. You want to, if you are leading a meeting or you want to get everyone's attention, you want to beautifully say your name. Hi, everyone. It's Melanie here. You have Melanie Espeland on the line. You want to just make sure you state your name clearly, give it a little room and some space figuratively, even if you're in a digital room, whether it's a little room or digital room, doesn't matter. Give yourself space to introduce yourself, make yourself known. Even if everyone on the call knows you, you can still say, hi, it's Melanie, or you can use your full name. That's a really nice way, again, to just cement your place in that room and literally that you're ready to be heard. I see that happen a lot with mock presentations with clients. It's really interesting how these subtleties, they just throw it away. So just be aware of that just in day-to-day conversation as well. I would say the third thing you can do to try to get people's attention would be telling a story. Now, telling a story, storytelling in general, we always say that you should be a storyteller if you're giving a presentation. And a lot of people just don't do this. So I would say tell a quick story. The key thing that you need to have an effective story is almost like using the STAR method of interviewing, which is the situation, the task, the action, the result. Whereas in this case, it's more about the person or the situation, the obstacle, and then how they overcame it, and giving them some reason to root for this character. It's like when you're watching a movie and someone has an obstacle they're against, something's going to happen. They're going to overcome that obstacle. So that's a nice, very simple, very quick way of thinking about storytelling in the context of a professional presentation. So that's a really nice way to kick one off if you are having some trouble keeping people engaged. I think other than that, let's see, I'm just trying to think of any other quick tips. One other one I would mention is I see this happen a lot in presentations where people really don't give you the so what of the presentation up front. where you walk in and it's, okay, we're going to discuss the data analysis of the XYZ project. So what? Why do we care? Why are we looking at this? Why do we care about the XYZ project? Why do we care about the data? What's the point? Where is this going? I think it's so helpful to give that so what in literally one sentence. If you could tell someone anything about this presentation, what's the one headline or the one key takeaway? If you saw the CEO in the elevator and he or she said, what's this meeting about? Why are you doing this? What's that one so what? Let people know why they should listen to you. Tell them why they should listen to you, and make sure it's tailored for that audience. So for example, if it's a room of junior analysts versus a room of C-suite executives, they probably have different interests and different needs. So again, you may even have to change that headline or the so what for whatever group you're speaking to. So I think honestly, that's one of the most effective ways to really herd a room of cats is to just say, hey, this is the so what. Great, now you want to listen. So I hope that those items were helpful to you. Any follow-up question there? All right, sounds like we're good.
Hi, I'm Melanie. It's Chris Pace.
Hi, Chris.
This is sort of the opposite of what you were doing as far as tone, controlling the tone. I think a lot of people in business, you hear the monotone speaker. And that's like the fastest way to put people to sleep. What sort of, what sort of techniques do you use, like, to control the tone of what you're saying? I know you did, elongating words, but how do you make it all sound natural versus, the roller coaster or whatever? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think one other thing I'm hearing in your voice, Chris, I just wanted to mention to you, make sure that you're hydrating enough. If you drink, I'm not sure if you're a coffee drinker, but make sure that you're hydrating. And one other thing I just want you to be aware of, I can't see you, but sometimes if you have a little bit of that gravel in your voice towards the end of the day, it can be because you're pointing upward or downward, your chin a little bit often. And therefore you're a little bit more strained in your throat. So just be aware of that. Maybe even take a look at yourself in the mirror or put a mirror in front of you at your workstation just to get a sense of how your chin is pointed, because it may be adding to a little bit of that gravelness towards the end of the day. So just wanted to throw that out there for you.
Yeah, no, it's naturally gravelly. It's a physical thing, which that's one of the things I need to try to control. Because the physics, my vocal cords don't line up, exactly. So that's why you have the gravelly voice. And I don't know, it's hard to hear if that's, a good thing or a bad thing, as far as the way it comes across.
Yeah, it is natural, more natural for some people than others. I can even kind of get that in my voice. If I kind of do this, I can kind of mimic it as well and kind of get that gravel sound, right? So it is also just a style, as well as for men in particular, it's a little bit more socialized into men. And it's also just something that naturally just occurs more in men than women typically. So nothing wrong with it. I wouldn't say it's a good or bad thing. I think the key thing for you is I just want to make sure that your vocal cords are healthy and that they're not being overused too much. So I think for you, I'm not particularly worried about it. It's more about just making sure your chin placement is nice and parallel to the floor and you're drinking water just to support your voice. Let's see. And I know you had asked about, really the original question here was asking about monotone. And I completely agree with you that it is one of the best ways to put asleep any audience, especially in a Zoom situation. It's just super difficult. So I would mirror some of the things that I had mentioned to Daisy, which a lot of it I find happens when clients are so in their head or they are very rehearsed. That I've seen a lot too, where you become a little bit more monotone and more robotic if you're actually too rehearsed. There is such a thing as being too rehearsed of a speaker. Unless you are a professional actor, you can actually be too rehearsed. In those situations, you already know exactly what you're going to say, so you're actually disconnected from that moment. You're not in the room, you're not in the moment, you're not participating. And so you come across as very flat or monotone. So I would advise, if you are practicing or prepping for any kind of presentation, never write down full sentences. Always write down bullets or ideas or phrases or just keywords so that you know what your outline is. So that can also help you to still be in the moment, aware of what you're doing and connected. So overall, try to be as connected in the moment as you can be and interactive with the audience as much as you can be. When it comes to actually changing your melody, the tips I gave earlier are helpful for this. I will say that there's a couple of things you can think about, Chris. I would be really curious what types of emotions go through your mind when you're in a typical presentation setting, and how we can combat those with almost an opposite emotion and build some triggers, as we talked about earlier, finding that moment in your memory, creating that trigger so that you authentically bring that new emotion to the table, or at least neutralize the more maybe negative or neutral emotion that you're trying to avoid. Again, the authenticity factor here is that because the emotion and the melody is linked to something that actually happened in your life, it's linked to something personal, it's authentic. You're not acting, you're not putting on a voice, if you can bring that into the present moment. So again, it's all about connecting to the present moment and being mindful of what's happening with you energetically. And then lastly, I would say you can you can master the manipulation of the melody, as we talked about earlier, where you could literally break down that emotion, as I did for gratitude, and say, okay, gratitude, it's going to be a lower pitch, it's going to be less inflections, you're going to have a slower pace, etc. So you can practice that as well. It just tends to be a little bit more challenging, and it tends to be something that's just going to take a longer time to learn. So that was a lot of information that I threw at you. So I want to know if you have any follow-up questions or just anything else that I can help to answer.
No, that was great. I'll follow up separately.
All right, great. Yeah,
Thanks.
my email's in the chat, so feel free to shoot me a message. Thanks, Chris. Let's see. I do see a note in direct message from Susie. And Susie, I know you direct messaged me. Would you like me to answer this with you privately over email, or would you like me to answer it with the group? Just let me know which you prefer.
Whatever you have time for.
All right, awesome. Well, I know we're past the hour, but I'm happy to answer questions, so let's do it. Susie had a nice question, guys. She asked about what are some tips on how women can deepen their voices to sound older or more authoritative? So Susie brings up a really interesting point socially. So we have been socialized in general to believe that a deeper sounding voice is more authoritative. It's similar to how most presidents are tall, because we consider height to be someone who is authoritative or that of a leader. So it's kind of the same idea with voices, where a deeper voice is likened to being authoritative or a leader or in control. Obviously, this is something that comes into play in business, especially for women or just anybody with more of a naturally higher pitched voice. So it's really a very interesting phenomenon. I am seeing this change over time with all the changes that are happening in the workplace, with diversity, with different generations. So it's cool to see that change, but it still does exist to a certain extent. If you guys are aware of the founder of Theranos, that crazy company that faked knowing how to, I forget exactly what the company did, but they did something with blood technology. And the owner basically faked her voice all the time. You can see videos of her faking her voice, and she would speak almost all the way down here. It was quite funny. And she did this on purpose because it made her sound more authoritative. That was a very extreme example and kind of ridiculous. Definitely watch the documentary if you haven't seen it. But with that, I always say, never fake your voice. You always want to be authentic. Authenticity is so important. If you are not authentic, you will not have executive presence. You won't have that gravitas. Even if someone can't put their finger on it, even if they're like, ah, I don't like that person, I'm not sure why. Or, oh, I don't know if I trust that person. Again, they'll know we are, as human beings, we are built to survive. That's what our brains are built to do. So we are built to kind of suss out if someone is not being authentic or not trustworthy, because that aligns to our survival. It's very important to be authentic. So that leaves you with just your natural voice. Everybody has a different octave range. Someone like Mariah Carey can sing in 8 octaves. Most of us can't do that. Most of us have a couple of octaves where we pretty much live, some more than others. If you want to use the lower part of your range, which I would recommend in business settings, you want to really practice that breathing exercise that we talked about earlier. If you remember, when I took that super sharp inhale and that sharp exhale, I sounded very different. So I'll do that again. Hi, I'm Melanie. Very different. Again, that's part of my natural speaking range, but it's just on the much higher side than where I am right now. So I would, Susie, practice your breathing technique. I would definitely make sure you're getting enough air in to support your voice. So that way you will be using just a lower natural part of your speaking ability. And it'll also add literally more air to support a more robust and powerful and textured voice. So there'll just be a little bit more meat to it, if you will. So I think for you, that's probably going to be the best bet. And in addition to that, you could potentially play with some of those melody exercises using emotions that have melodies that use lower pitches. So, for instance, gratitude that we use has a little bit of a lower pitch. One that you wouldn't necessarily want to use is excitement. A high level of excitement tends to actually increase your pitch. So, these are a couple of different things that you can consider. So I hope that was helpful, Susie. Just let me know if you have any follow-up questions.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're so welcome. Let's see, we're a couple minutes past the hour. Does anyone have any other questions? You're welcome to ask me right now. I can stay on for a few more minutes, or you are also absolutely welcome to email me. Again, my email is hello@espelandenterprises.com. My last name, Espeland, it's Espeland. So I'll pause for a second to see if there are any other questions. Okay, I think we're good to go then. Jai, I think we're good. I know we're a little past the hour, so thank you so much to everybody that joined today and stayed on. I hope that you found this to be really helpful. Again, as a Columbia alum, my door is always open to you, so please feel free to get in touch or add me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm just glad that we could be here today, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Melanie.
you.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a great night.